Well, it does seem like life has its ups and downs. We have the times where we have a lot of joy and we experience victory and we're feeling good about life and we're feeling on top of the world. And then sometimes it changes quickly, though, doesn't it? That we can feel sorrow and we can feel down. We have some kind of a tragedy, something happens, something strikes in our life. And maybe it is a little bit unexpected, but sometimes it's just out of nowhere. And sometimes it's really hard to work through those things. So this is kind of a precursor. In 2 weeks, we're going to be having the seminar, and I'm not really going to take anything away from what he's going to say, because I think I already know what he's going to say, because I did listen to all of his lessons so far. So, because I didn't want to step on his toes. So you can still come and say, well, he's probably going to say something a little different than what I said. But the point is, sometimes we all can learn from a seminar like living with loss. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But the song we just sang kind of says, sometimes when we go through difficulties in life, they hang on for a while. We think about victories and we think about losses. And I'm not thinking about a Canadian Toronto team at all right now. But how long is the loss going to last for? I mean, last night, a little disappointing. Today, it's kind of like, don't care, move on. Now, I know some of the other people, either the people that actually played or the people that bet their whole life on it, which is just a silly thing to do. Don't be betting on nothing, because that's just craziness. But sometimes sorrows last for a short while. But sometimes we have losses in our life that can last a long time. And the song that we just sang about, sometimes we feel alone. Sometimes we may feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we feel like, I don't know if God cares. I don't know where he is. I'm going through a severe trial, a difficulty, a loss, a challenge. I'm going through emptiness. I'm going through frustration. I'm going through, don't even know where to turn. I don't know how to go on. I'm not even sure if I want to go on. And I've been praying, and I'm kind of wondering, getting the church to pray for me too, and just not getting better. And maybe it's been weeks or months, sometimes even years. And it's just like, when's it going to get better? When am I going to feel better? When am I going to get peace with this thing? And that's the challenge. And quite frankly, I don't think we've ever learned very well how to deal with loss in our life. I mean, how many people here would say, well, I grew up in a home where whenever there was loss, especially if it was, let's just say a relative, maybe even a parent, or grandparent, well, we go to the funeral and shed a few tears and then, give it a day and it's time to move on, right? Well, most of us don't move on that quickly. Now, you think you do sometimes. You think, well, I've just put that in the past, moving along. And the problem is you're carrying a lot of a burden and you don't even necessarily know what it is. And then something else happens and then all of a sudden you're a crying mess. And you think, where did that emotion come from? Somebody just told me that, that their hamster died and I'm crying like it's the end of the world. Well, probably you've got a lot of emotions you've not really dealt with. And so here's something maybe even to parents or grandparents to say, how do we deal, and how do we teach this to our children? Well, this is the way we've done it in the past. Well, if you're really sorrowful when maybe your relative dies, then don't cry in front of the kids. Kind of makes you look weak. You got to tell the kids, we're tough, You can cry a little bit, but just don't cry too much, I'll show you. We don't cry. Tough people don't cry. That's just a very poor way of doing anything. Why not cry and show, I'm sad, I'm sorrowful, I've got these emotions and I'm not even sure what to do with them. So you can teach them. So even little kids, they can learn, can't they? They can learn about loss. So we can teach them about loss. Well, how would you teach them? Well, think about it this way. You've got a dog that's like 13 years old, and you've got a child that's 10 years old. That child has known that dog its entire life. And that dog may be its best friend, and that child loves that dog more than it loves you. Probably. The dog doesn't, chide him. It doesn't tease him. It doesn't discipline him. It doesn't have rules for him. The dog just loves your child and plays with the child. Even when you say, oh, I'm too tired to play, or I got dishes to do. My dogs never did dishes. Right? The dog's available. So why not try to teach your child about mourning and sorrow and loss when a dog dies? Then a child might be ready when a relative dies, like a grandma. Because you can teach them about loss. Now the big question is, the child's like, well, I'm really sorrowful and sad and empty and lonely and crying all the time because my dog, who I've known my whole life, died. And what if you die? Or what if mom dies? Now you could say, you don't have to worry about that. We're going to be here for you. You liar. You just lie into the child, aren't you? How do you know that? How do you know? That's kind of a James thing. How do you know what's going to be tomorrow? How do you know about next week, next year? How do you know how long you're going to be around for? Because even adults die at a young age. I'm not saying don't comfort the child, but maybe you're preparing the child because one day you might die. Did you ever think of that? You might die one day. And how's your child going to be able to respond and react through that? So it's like a teaching moment. But the problem through this is a lot of times we do feel empty and we do feel lonely and we don't know where to turn. And so we're just going to look at a couple verses today that talk about how we can really lean on the Lord because, it's kind of always a challenge with friends, with family, with people at work, and even people in the church. First of all, a lot of times we don't know how to respond when other people have lost loved ones. And we may even have lost our loved ones, but we still don't really know how to respond, right? What do we say? People say, well, I don't even know if I want to go to the funeral, because what would I say to them? Sometimes you just go to the funeral, you don't have to say anything. I think about Job's friends. They show up. They did a fabulous job in the first little while. You know why? They didn't say anything. They just sat and cried with him. As soon as they opened their big mouth, that was it. It's like, I'm not sure you guys are my friends. I think I can get better counsel and better comfort from my enemies. Can you guys just go home now? Yeah, sometimes we don't know what to say. And sometimes we don't have to figure it all out. We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to have all the words that's just going to comfort their souls from here on out. No, just got to be there. But where do we go when, as the song we just sang says, this loneliness, this emptiness, where can we turn? Even though you may have a lot in life, you can still go through sorrow that only the Lord can bless your heart. So Psalm 34, just taking a few verses out of the chapter, but again, it's a chapter of David going through a difficult, challenging time in his life, but he says, when the righteous call for help, the Lord hears and he delivers. The Lord hears us when we cry to him, when we pray to him, when maybe we're in sorrow and grief, and maybe we just, maybe through tears or maybe through a loud voice of yelling, we were like, God, be with me. God, where are you? God, I need you. God, come right now. He hears us and he cares about us and he'll deliver us. Now, it may not feel that way. And that's the other big thing through going through whatever loss is. Now, the seminar that's going to be in a couple weeks is talking about different kinds of loss. It's just not loss of losing a loved one. It could be losing your health. You ever thought about that? You ever thought about when people get older? I've known some people that have gotten older. But, when people get older, it's really hard sometimes? Somebody saying, you can't drive anymore. You know what that's really saying? You're going to be stuck at home. You're going to be isolated. The thing that you've enjoyed doing, your freedom, all of that's being taken away. Do you think that's a kind of a loss that somebody would feel broken over? I'm really that old and now I'm going to be stuck. And now nobody trusts me anymore. They don't think I can drive. I still think I'm the best driver. I can drive just as well now as I could when I was a teenager. Oh, that's probably true. But just kidding. teenagers, I know you're great drivers. Okay. So, but the point is, it's like, wow, that getting sick and losing my health, that's hard. Being in the same job for many, many years, and that's where you are able to make money. That's where you've got friends. That's where you feel like, this is my sense of accomplishment. It's my sense of purpose. This is something that I can do. I can do it well, and I'm appreciated at work. And one day they just kind of say, we don't need you anymore. That's a big loss for people. Sometimes when people even plan their retirement, they think, when I'm retired, it'll be great. Did I say retarded? Retired, when I'm retired, it'll be great. I won't be working. I'll have a free time, I'll have all these people calling me all the time because they need help doing this, that, and the other. But, when I'm retired, it'll be great. And then when they retire, it's like, wow, I really miss that sense of purpose and meaning and being needed and wanted. And, so that's a loss. So we go through a lot of different losses in our life. And when we go through losses, what do we do? Now, sometimes we can share them with somebody else. And maybe somebody else who has lost a job or has lost their health or has lost a spouse, right? They're all losses. But how we learn to deal with them is kind of the key. And quite often, at least initially, where we're at, we deal with them emotionally. Has anybody ever made really, really good decisions based on their emotions? Sometimes. Not very often, though. Right? Emotionally. That's why sometimes when somebody has a great loss in their life, and that could be being let go from work or losing a spouse, they kind of say, it's probably a good idea not to make any big decisions for a while. And you're thinking, okay, well, I'll give it a week or two. And they're like, no, we mean a while like a year or two. Because you're so emotional that you may just decide to do all kinds of things that are out of character and don't even really make sense, but because you're doing it out of emotion and feeling. Well, this will make me feel better. So I'll just do this, do that. So, but of course we can't live our lives based on just emotional feelings. There's got to be more to that. So we call to the Lord, and the Lord's going to help us. He's going to lead us and guide us, and he's near to the brokenhearted. And he saves those crushed in spirit. So this is David just pouring out his heart. He went through a lot of times of difficulties and challenges in his life. Sometimes they were not things that were his fault. He didn't bring them on himself. They weren't based on a poor decision he made. He did have struggles like that. But he also had struggles based on his sin. Just really bad choices and mistakes and sins that he made in his life that brought, guess what they brought? Consequences. And he suffered through those. And he often cried out to the Lord. And that's kind of the Psalm 53 of crying out to the Lord for God's leading and guiding and forgiveness. Psalm 31, again of David. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief, and my soul and my body. What's he saying? This sorrow and grief and pain is taking over everything. It's taking over my mind and my heart and even my physical body. I just don't feel like eating. I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like getting up off the couch. I just want to stay in bed all day. Just all that kind of depression that comes from this deep sorrow. My life is spent with sorrow. My years with sighing. Years? It's like, yeah, it's been going on for a long time. I'm still like, I can't believe this. It's just a struggle just to kind of make it through the day. My strength fails because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away. So he's just finding it hard. So, this is the guy after God's own heart. This is the guy that wrote a lot of the Psalms about let's worship the Lord and let's meet the Lord in his sanctuary. And, let's just, praise God for all that he's done. And he's a man after God's own heart. So you read this and go, that's not the David I know. Well, guess what? David was a human being just like we are. He was a person of the flesh. He was a person that had feelings. He was a person that had sorrows. He was a person that experienced a lot of difficulty. Just because he was the king, it didn't mean everything was, hang on, what's that song say? It says, even if I was a king and had great riches, all my own, but I don't know a thing in this whole wide world that's worse than being alone. And that's what David felt. A lot of times he felt like, where are my friends? Where are my counselors? Where are the people that can help me and encourage me and lift me up and pray for me? Where are those people? You know what he says? Sometimes I just got to turn to God because the people aren't really helping. Now, it's good to be a people helper. And did I say we're having a seminar in a couple weeks? That's maybe where it may be helpful for some of us to say, how can I be a helper? How can I understand what my friend is going through? Because they've just suffered a lot of loss. I've not suffered it yet. Now, we're all going to suffer great loss in our life, right? Does that make sense? Like some people, we talk about losing a spouse, but I know that there are some women, maybe in their 30s, 40s, even 50s, they talk more to their mother than they do to their own spouse. Now, it's not a choice of theirs. It's like the spouse, how many men who really sit down and talk to their wives a lot, You know how that conversation goes, right? Well, hey, honey, how'd it go today? Everything was good. Anything happen at work? No, just the same. Okay, well, any news? No, everything's good. Well, that's the conversation. It's over, right? But, a daughter can talk to her mom for a long, long time. So what happens when mom dies? Who's she going to be talking to now? Wink, wink, gentlemen, time to step in. It's not going to happen, though. It's not you. I understand that. It's kind of not who you are. You're not really somebody who bears your soul and shares all the stories. And like generally your wife, guys, how many people wives say, well, honey, how are you feeling today? Maybe that's a better question. It's like, or they say, this happened at work. Well, how did that make you feel? It's like, I didn't know I had feelings, right? Never mind. I don't know what my feelings are. How can I tell you what they are? I'm totally, completely out of touch with my feelings. But anyway, the idea is a close bond. It's very difficult when you lose someone that's close to you. So this is the seminar. In 2 weeks, starting Friday night. Actually, they're on Friday. There's one at 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's for anybody that wants to go. But the exact same lesson is at 6:30. Because there's some people that don't like driving at night. Some people that maybe they're going to be busy Friday night, but they're available Friday morning, right? So 2 exact same lessons. You can choose which one you want to come to. Either come during the day or come in the evening. Does that make sense so far? The rest of it you can understand. It's just Saturday morning. Then we're going to have a lunch. Oh, by the way, if you're going to come to lunch, there's a sign up on the board so we know how many people are coming. So sign up if you're going to come to lunch so we can save a seat for you. And then Sunday morning Bible class, worship, then Sunday evening worship as well. So that's kind of the plan for the weekend. So we encourage you to come. We encourage you to invite your friends and family. It's going to be very practical. So, disclaimer type thing. He spends a lot of time talking about how to deal with things. So it's not like a huge Bible study where he's got like 35 verses for each session. He doesn't really spend a lot of time. He spends time talking about biblical concepts, but not quoting a lot of scriptures, okay? So just to let you know, it's kind of a very practical, hands-on, this is how you deal with problems. And I'll just tell you a little bit about him, just because how's he qualified? Well, he's a preacher for a long time, and when his wife died about 10 years ago, he's like, he went through it all, and he's kind of like, I had no idea what a lot of the people in the church had been going through when they lost their spouse. It was kind of like what we usually do. Hey, I'm really sorry for your loss. We'll be praying for you, and I'll bring a casserole over on Tuesday night. But, next week, you're on your own. I mean, we don't say that, but don't we treat people that way sometimes? Oh, we might call them up once in a while and say, hey, how are you doing? But, many of you that have suffered loss, like how many people, get a call on your spouse's birthday, your spouse has passed away, and they call up and say, hey, I remember it's his birthday today, it's her birthday today, and just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. So it doesn't happen a lot. So that's kind of where you feel this emptiness, this loss. I have to battle this on my own. Because guess what? Hate to say it out loud, but the rest of us have gone on and we've gotten over the loss of your spouse. But you're never getting over it, okay? You're never going to get over it. You can get through it maybe, but you're not going to get over it. A great loss in your life. It's a challenge. So here's just a little bit about loss then. This is Jesus. So we had the Lord's Supper about Jesus' death. I wonder how that affected Jesus. He's going to die. He knows he's going to die. You wonder how that affected his disciples. They didn't quite understand he was going to die, but he told them many times he was going to die. So this is during the Passover. The same thing as what the Lord's Supper is, kind of became the Lord's Supper. This is, my body, which is going to be given, my blood, which is going to be shed. When the hour had come, Jesus reclined at the table with the apostles with him. He said to them, I have earnestly desired to eat the Passover with you before I suffer. That's a strong word. He didn't just say before I'm going to die. He says I'm going to suffer. That's strong. He's going to go through agony. He's going to go through pain. He's going to go through a lot of challenges, both mentally and physically and spiritually, emotionally. He's going to suffer. And could you imagine those words coming out of his, like, what did he say? You know how sometimes when you say something, but it touches you emotionally as it's coming out of your mouth? It's kind of like, suffer. Like, kind of start losing it. It's like, he in his mind is thinking, I don't know how I'm going to endure it. I don't know how I'm going to go through it. And so Jesus went through a lot with his disciples. They got to Gethsemane, the place of prayer, where they would often spend time there praying over the last 2 or 3 years. Jesus went to them to the place called Gethsemane. He said to his disciples, sit here while I go over and pray. And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, that'd be James and John, he began to be, what? Sorrowful. Not just sorrowful, this is troubled. Troubled. Sometimes the word may come anxious, overwhelmed. Like he's not suffered yet, but he knows what it's going to be. And he's having a hard time keeping his composure. He's having a hard time processing this. He's having a hard time thinking, you know what he's thinking. Do I really want to do it? Oh, we know what the answer to that. He doesn't want to do it. Can I do this? And I guess he would say only by the grace and the power of the Father. This is emotional. This is what we call deep sorrow. This is a great loss. He hasn't yet gone through it, but he knows what it's going to be. And so he says to his disciples, come with me and pray with me. You know what Jesus is saying I need? I need some companions. I need some comfort. I need some backup. I need some people that are there with me and sharing in this, sharing in the trouble and the sorrow and the grief and the pain. I need you to be with me. That's a challenge sometimes. It's a challenge sometimes when you're going through deep trouble to say, would you sit with me? Can you come and be with me? The disciples didn't really understand exactly what Jesus was saying. They didn't understand what was going to happen. At this point, I think they're still thinking Jesus is talking in like parables. Or he's talking like some type of simile. Or like he's not going to die. I don't know what it means. It says he's going to suffer and die. But what does that mean? It's like code. Got to break the code because it's not happening to Jesus. Like Peter even said, I'm not even going to let it happen to you. They don't understand. But Jesus wants them to be with them. And this is Jesus' prayer. As he says to the disciples, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Could you imagine being one of the disciples listening to that? Very sore. Like now our question is disciples, what can we do to help him? Do we just go, well, that's too bad? Or, so sorry to hear that. Or, yeah, we'll pray with you. We wouldn't know what to pray because we still don't really know what you're talking about. But this is intense. This is intense. Going a little further, Jesus fell on his face and he prayed, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. And that's the prayer that we pray when we're going through sorrow and loss and suffering. God, I wanted my spouse to live. I wanted my child to live. I wanted to keep that job. I didn't want my health to go down so quickly. I didn't want that. But God, if this is your will, if this is the plan, I don't understand the plan, it doesn't make sense to me. Kind of like if you pray like David sometimes. God, this is not a very good plan. God, I think you should change your plan. God, it's a challenge sometimes going through it, but this is what Jesus is praying. So we learn from the sorrow that he has, the relationships that he needs, the support he needs from other people. But he came back to his disciples, and he found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, so could you not watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray that you would not enter into temptation. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. I think the disciples were saying, we wanted to stay with you. We wanted to stay awake. We wanted to pray with you. We wanted to be there for you, but we were just overwhelmed. It was just like too much. We wanted to, but physically, we're exhausted. Couldn't you just stay with me? And that's what people say, right? Can't you just be with me to support me and help me and hold my hand and walk me through this? And it's hard. It's hard for the person that's going through the sorrow, and it's hard for the support group, the family, the friends, church members. We don't know exactly how to help. We don't know what to do. We don't even know if we have enough energy, maybe even emotional energy for us to do it. And when they rose from prayer, Jesus came to the disciples. This is the third time. Found them sleeping because they were lazy. He found them sleeping because they stayed up too late the night before. He found them sleeping because, they're just young guys and, they just ran out of energy. Why were they sleeping? Because they were overwhelmed with sorrow. Sometimes when you get deep sorrow, it's exhausting. It's emotional. It's not physical, but it's exhausting. And it does something to your body. And it makes it kind of like, I can't stay awake. I'm trying to stay awake, but my mind is filled with so many emotions. I'm exhausted. And they fell asleep from sorrow. So in other words, cut them some slack. We say, oh, those disciples, good for nothing friends. They couldn't even stay awake with Jesus when he was praying, probably for like 4 hours. Oh, for 4 hours? I'd be tired like in the first 10 minutes. But they also had the sorrow element to it as well. They're trying to be there for him. Why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you would not enter into temptation. So this is important because Jesus is praying because he's going to the cross, but he's also praying for his disciples, right? That God would be with them, that they'd have strength, that they would be able to endure, they'd be able to understand, that the Holy Spirit would, come upon them and, that they would be victorious. Right? So that's like a John chapter 17 prayer where Jesus prays for his disciples. He also prays for other believers that would come after the disciples, even reading and listening to the disciples' testimony. But Jesus was praying for his disciples as well. And perhaps the disciples never heard that prayer because they were sleeping when Jesus was praying it. Well, where does this end up then? There appeared to Jesus an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling to the ground. First of all, I don't know if we've ever been that intense in prayer, that sorrowful, that anxious, that painful in prayer, maybe begging God, not understanding the full ramifications of everything that's going to happen. But Jesus knows he's going to die and take upon himself the weight of sin of the entire world. Not just the people that lived back then, but from the very beginning to the very end. Anybody who's ever lived in the world, Jesus took upon himself all of the sin. And that destroyed and crushed his relationship with his Father in heaven. And so he knew that this is the great loss that he did not want to have to endure. Of first understanding the punishment of that sin, the guilt of that sin he took upon himself. It was our guilt that he took. And he was separated, dead in his relationship with the Father in heaven. And that's why he's on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus knew that moment was coming. And so he had this grief. But the one thing I do want to see in here, and you can work this out on your own, an angel came. Boy, sometimes you feel like there's nobody here. There's nobody helping. And maybe people are actually trying to help, but you just don't sense it. Or maybe it's not enough help that you think you need. Maybe you feel all alone, like that's all alone. But you're not all alone. But you feel it. And feelings, you got to deal with those. You can't just ignore them. But maybe sometimes you need reality to say, maybe sometimes there are people close by, but maybe there's not. What if there's nobody nearby but you pray to God? What if? I'm not saying he will. I'm not making promises for God. What if he sends you an angel? What if he sends a helper to come, to be with you, to walk you through it? Now, it could be somebody showing up physically, I guess. That's generally in the Bible. That's what angels look like. They kind of look like a person. You wouldn't look at them and go, oh, there's an angel right there. Right? So Hebrews 13 says sometimes we even entertain angels. We don't even know it. So in case you're wondering, I might be an angel, for instance. So treat me especially good today. Right? I don't know what it means. Maybe we do entertain angels, so be on your best behavior. But anyway, even after Jesus died, in other words, we sometimes think angels are Old Testament things. Well, angels are sometimes New Testament things too. I don't know. But God will do what he wants to do, and he'll do what we need in order for us to have victory, to come through. We're trusting him, we're praying to him, and maybe he'll even decide to hang on, an angel from heaven to strengthen him. To strengthen him. I don't know how that works. Back to the Psalm, verse 27. One thing I have asked of the Lord, and what I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, to inquire in his temple, for he will hide me in the shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent, and he will lift me high upon a rock. So again, this is the psalmist just praying to God. I'm trusting in you. You're going to help me through this. I'm going to be able to rise above. I'm still going to have all those memories. I'm still going to have some of the pain. I'm still going to have maybe some of the regrets. Maybe I'm going to have some of the sorrows. And I'm still going to shed some tears once in a while. And I'm still going to have those times, the special days and things that come up. Today we even have photos that sometimes we look at, and they bring up those memories. And sometimes the pain comes back again, but God is going to be with us, and he will carry us through. In Psalm 73, nevertheless, I'm continually with you. You hold my right hand. You guide me with your counsel. And afterward, you will receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but you? There is none on earth that I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is my strength of my heart and my portion forever. He's saying, God, I know you're not going to give up on me. Sometimes I just need your strength that I won't give up on you. I know that you are always with me. I just don't know if I can always walk with you. Just help me that I can be trusting. Help me that I can maybe submit to your will and your plan, even though it's not always easy. And we go through loss. If I ask the question today, has anybody here not gone through a major loss in their life? Probably most of us would put our hands up. Yes, we have. And we know that in life, if we talk about the death of a spouse or a parent or child, it's hard. But we know in life that's what happens, that people die. And we know one day we're going to die. And what the psalmist is saying, one day when I die, I'm going to be in heaven. And we know in the book of Revelation, the Bible says, but in heaven there is no more pain, no more sorrow, no more death, no more crying. It's a new place, a new way of living with just joy, peace, gladness, worship, harmony, unity, just kind of being the perfect day with the perfect people, the perfect moment. But that's going to be forever in heaven. That's what God's prepared for us. So yeah, pain, difficulty, loss in this life. But God's got something much better planned for us. And that's the invitation we give. If people want to become a child of God, become born again, to be baptized into Christ. If we can encourage, let's stand. We'll sing the song. Let us know how we can be a blessing today.